Remember, no unplugging our mics, anything like that.
There, is this volume better? Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the episode of Game Pass Grab Bag, your weekly podcast for your games to the Game Pass collection, bringing 3 unique perspectives of varying skill range. I am the Don of this episode, Andrew. With me, the one who will be sleeping with the fishes, Keith.
Hello.
And the one who's bringing the gabagool, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
I was gonna say, should we say? I'm like tempted to say a bunch of like 30 Mafia references, but I'm like, half of this, I don't know if some of the stuff, it's like, is this racist? I don't even know what they're saying. So
yeah,
like,
you got to tread lightly.
Yeah, well, Keith's Italian. Keith could at least do the Italian accent, right? This week we had a listener request. We played Mafia Definitive Edition by Hangar 13. Well, the Definitive Edition is by Hangar 13. The original game, Mafia, is from Illusion Softworks. But Mafia is, I've seen some people describe this as a 1930s Grand Theft Auto. I would not describe this game. I am describing it as a third-person shooter. This is obviously Mafia. Goes between 1930 and 1938, where you're playing a brand new Mafia member who is rising up in the ranks of the Salieri family as you do the Don's bidding. But yeah, going around, I'll start this episode off. So as I said, this was a listener request. I've heard a lot of things about the Mafia trilogy. I've played a little bit of 2. The only thing I remember, and I thought it was this one, but the only thing I remember is like the controversy with this game, or one of them was the collectible was vintage Playboy magazine covers. I thought it was this one, but I guess that was Mafia 2. So I was like, I think I played a little bit of Mafia 2. But yeah, anyway, our listener said, this is kind of like Grand Theft Auto meets The Godfather. And I was like, okay, I'd be down for this. Like I said, I wouldn't describe this as Grand Theft Auto. This is a third-person shooter. There's really nothing to do in the open world. And because of that, I'm actually give this a pass. I think it's just because my expectations of this was way different. And then when I played this, I was don't get me wrong, there's fun to be had. If you just don't go into this game thinking it's going to be like Grand Theft Auto, big open world sandbox, all this stuff. No, it's not like that. But what just irritated me while I'm playing this game, there's so many things I was like, this game could be great. I had so many different ideas. I'm like, if this game just let me do this, if the game let me do this, I would love this game. But what's here, I was a little disappointed. So I'm going to give it barely a pass.
So I don't know, maybe it was in a text somewhere and I just didn't see it. But I don't know. I don't know. I guess I kind of thought it had some level of like you said, Grand Theft Auto to it. Did the later ones in the trilogy start to get to that? Maybe I
played a little bit of 2, and when I say a little bit, I mean I think I played like an hour or 2, and I'm pretty sure that one has a bit more. Okay. I know the third one does. The third one takes place like in the 70s, which is unfortunate.
Well, all that to say, I think overall I am kind of split on it because I didn't have that full expectation. I don't think like you did, Andrew, but at the same token, there was definitely moments where I was just getting like, I don't want to say bored, but there wasn't a lot going on if you weren't really invested in the story. And probably about halfway through my playing, and I kind of stopped being interested in the story at all. So I was just kind of playing to play, and
especially when halfway. I was actually kind of checked out at like a quarter of the way in the story.
Yeah. But I all that to say, I think it's a game in the sense of it's not totally bad overall. I kind of was just bored, and I felt like I was doing a lot of the same thing over and over again. I was glad when I found out I could skip driving sequences as much as I actually really liked. I liked the driving though. That's kind of the problem with it. That was what I wanted to do a lot. One of the things I wanted to do a lot more of, but at the same time, the in between downtime driving wasn't really worth it. So I was happy to skip over those overall. So I think I'm kind of just a hair past where you are, Andrew, in that it is a game, but it's like barely hanging by a thread for me. And at least as far as Mafia 1, maybe if we end up playing the later ones, I'll feel a little different, but this Mafia 1 is just barely hanging on.
I was kind of like, I thought I was with you guys. Andrew's initial description here kind of made me think, okay, me and Andrew are on the same page. And then you guys just said some things that I think I'm actually going to fight against. This is a pass.
Perfect.
I think this is my first time coming on here and actually giving a pass.
No, Garden Story.
Oh, that's true. Oh, wow, man, good memory.
And I'm pretty sure there was actually other games you did too.
I'm pretty sure
you
I
said
forgot
like,
I
I'm going to be the guy who
played
comes
that
on here and passes everything.
Sounds like
so.
Aaron.
This one's gonna get a pass, but when we get to these points, I'm gonna disagree with you guys on the story. In fact, in my opinion,
What, you like the story?
I actually think the story's great. In fact, I felt like that's where they put the budget. I think they put the budget into two areas, and that was story and acting. I think those two things are by and far, considering when this game came out, really, really good. Like, usually when you have a game like this, where they cut the budget is in the story. It's usually really thin. This game
we're gonna argue.
is, here's why. How much gameplay is in this game? Let's
Not a lot.
Be 5 hours, 6 hours total.
If we're putting percentage, how much of this game do you think you are actually physically moving your controller?
Less than you're not.
I'd say 40%.
Yeah.
I'd say 40% is actual gameplay and the rest is story. So clearly they cared about actually crafting a story. And I'm not saying it's original. I'm not saying it does anything unique. But as far as it goes for a Mafia story, this is actually pretty solid, I think. It's got a great villain. It's got a great cast of characters. I actually loved almost all of the characters in this game. I thought they were all really great. So I'm actually kind of shocked that that's an area you guys thought was weak. I thought that was its strongest point. Its weakest points are almost everything else. That's where I have more issues on everything else than I do with the actual story and the acting. All that stuff I thought was actually really good.
Then we'll get into this.
Yeah,
because I disagree. I think the budget was cut from the story. All right, so we'll get into it.
How could you possibly see a game that is 60% story and say, "Well, they must have cut the budget there"? That was the game.
Well, let me first get more into the story, and we'll talk about this, Aaron.
Okay.
I've got Aaron fired up. We're not even 5 minutes in. He's going.
So as I said, the story of Mafia, you play Tommy Angelo. You're this cab driver in made up city called Lost Heaven, which was a really dumb name. I think it's supposed to be New York-ish.
I thought it was Chicago. Same. It's the L trains. That's why I was thinking Chicago.
Okay, no, that's a good point. Okay, because then you're dealing with people from Kentucky, so that makes sense.
He does
that makes sense too.
He does tell the priest at one point, tell them you heard guys with Eastern accents or East Coast accents. So they clearly weren't from the East Coast.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay. But anyway, it's this made up town called Lost Heaven. You're playing this cab driver who ends up kind of taken hostage, but from a couple mafia members. You help them, they help you. You decide, I'm not going to join the mafia until you do. But you play the story. Yeah, we'll get into that. So you play Tommy Angelo as he basically rides up in this family, the Salieri family, as they go and have a mafia war and whatnot. And you kind of just figure out, the whole point of the game too is it takes place in the future, but this whole gameplay is him telling the story that is taking place in the past. So you're reliving his memories. But so like starting off with the story. Okay, the beginning is what first irritated me. So like I said, Tommy Angelo here is telling the story to this cop because he wants out. He wants to get out of this mafia. He wants protection. So he's kind of explaining what's going on. What irritated me is your character. Okay, I know nothing about your character. All they tell you is that he's a cab driver, which was irritating me because everyone's like, oh, you're a cab driver? Clearly, you must be a fantastic wheelman. Do you want to be a race car driver? Because, yeah, every Uber driver today can ride a race car because they ride around the town. It makes no sense.
No, I'm going to stop you right there. This is 1930. Not everyone has a car.
Okay, and
if you are a consistent driver, I'm actually totally on board. I think we're going to disagree about the points we don't like about the story, even though we might agree about not liking the story.
You're missing an important plot point. The reason he becomes a driver or a race car driver is because their driver got put in the hospital.
Yeah, I know, but I just think it's funny.
Oh, you must be able to.
But did you not find that weird? Where it was like, we literally have no one else who apparently could drive a car. You clearly must be able to do a race car because you drove
They say you're the best wheelman.
He literally said, we don't have another choice. Frank says to him, I'm coming to you because we don't have another choice. You argue that you don't race cars, and he says, I wouldn't be coming to you if we had another choice. Andrew, you are clearly blind to the story and are accusing it when you weren't paying attention.
Okay, no. All right, this is. I'm not really like, that's just minor. It's a minor complaint that I'm having.
All right, this is a game now. I changed
my complaint is why your character joins the mafia. So, like I said, you help these guys get away. You go to their bar. Yeah, you helped us out. Here's a bunch of money. And your character's like, I didn't want to be part of the dirty world. Like, I want to stay clean and just be a driver and do my thing. Then one day, some people go up to him, like, hey, remember us? My first thought is, no, who the heck are these guys? They start smashing up your cab. And you're like, my first thing, I'm going to go to the mafia. You go to the mafia, they protect you from the guys, and your character goes, can I start a mob war? Like, what? And then instantly he's like, yeah,
that's the part I took issue. Like, everything you complained about up until that final point, I'm fine with. It was kind of weird. I took a very big issue with the fact that, yes, you just walk in and Don's like, hey, I'll just give you some money and you get out of here.
Car up.
And he goes, no, I want to smash things up. And then because you smashed up a couple cars, well, catch the fire, blow them up, all of these things. He's like, you're immediately part of my inner circle. Like, I don't know what the mob or mafia really runs like, but every movie I have ever seen or TV show I've ever seen, they don't just walk you right into the inner circle, sit with a Don as his right-hand man. That is absolute nonsense. And it doesn't ruin the entire story. It is just a nonsensical point to me. That's all.
All of that would be true if that was how the story played out. But of course, again, you guys are missing important points here. He is almost murdered, and his only way of making money was just destroyed. It was smashed. He didn't run. He did not run to the mob. He was running away when the other guys come in and step in and help him out. He also does not just join the inner circle. In fact, the Don offers him a loan to fix up his vehicle. He says, I feel like I'm responsible for this because the reason you're even here is because of us. I'm going to offer you a loan. And then you, now with your livelihood just destroyed, said, no, I want retribution for this. He doesn't say, let's start a mob war. And all they were offering was, all right, you want to go smash up some vehicles? We'll help you. And that was all that was offered. It wasn't a mob war. It was just, all right, you want to go smash up some vehicles? I'll bring a guy with you to go help you out. And that was it. And then he's enticed into the family, like all good mob stories. The mob pulls him in, like it always is bound to happen. But to just act like, oh, he just walked in there and joined the inner circle and started a mob war. That is not true.
I didn't say anything about a mob war.
Very important plot points that get him there.
Because,
don't combine this into one bad take.
Hold on.
Take us on individually.
You are essentially asking for a mob war because they originally were saying, like, hey, they stay on their turf, they stay on ours. Like they will not cross our turf because they don't want to start a full-out war. But you, as this guy, go, hey, let's get in cars, go to their turf, and destroy their cars. That is inciting a war, is it not?
No, I mean, we just finished playing Yakuza, and I couldn't Yakuza. Sorry,
I think it's funny.
So we're playing American Yakuza this week, and I couldn't help but keep thinking about that. It's the crossing boundaries thing. It's all about boundaries in these, mafia, mob, whatever it may be. It seems weird to cross into it, and to throw you were wrong on Sandra. These aren't just some random guys. It's the Morello family who you, I believe, were part of the robbery with when you helped Sam and Polly.
Yeah.
So it's not like these are just some random guys. That's where I can get all the connections. I do. To me, it's just I feel like all of a sudden you're just like, I guess you're the only person they could ever find that could drive a car reasonably, and for that, you immediately are just everyone's personal driver for all of the top people.
He even going back to when he's talking to the cop in the bar. So when you're in the future, he even says, I felt like it was fate. I'm just the cab driver who was standing outside on the sidewalk when these two guys come running up to me. So he even acknowledges the fact that, like, the only reason I'm here, the only reason I got involved in this to begin with was I was just the unlucky guy that was standing outside of his cab at the time these guys run up to me. I felt like they did a good job at pacing this story to create these connecting points. It wasn't just like, let's just jump to the next thing, jump to the next thing, jump to the next thing. That's where again, 60% of this game is this story, and I thought they did a great job of getting you to that point where it's not breaking new grounds. This is very much how a mob story plays out. You know, the unsuspecting guy gets pulled in, gets in way over his head, and wants to get out. That stuff is pretty boilerplate when it comes to mob stories. I thought all this stuff made sense. There was not one point where I was like, okay.
Aaron, how far in the game did you get?
I mean, I have no clue. I would say I would probably more than halfway, probably 60, 70% of the way through.
So did you start the actual war?
Yes.
See, okay, this is where I'm arguing of, I feel like the story was cut. I felt like this story jumped so much. Literally, you do a mission where the bartender's like, hey, can you walk my daughter home?
Sure.
You're like, okay, yeah, fine. You guys are talking like, hey, this is practically like the first time they're kind of meeting, and they're talking, yeah, we'll probably go on a date. Literally, the next mission, it's like, oh yeah, we're full blown on a relationship forever, and
it also jumps like 2 years.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's exactly. It jumps like 2 years.
What type of mob
did you want it to be a dating sim at the same time?
No, but I want connection. I have no connection with any of these characters. I know nothing about the main character. I know nothing about his past. I felt like his motivations didn't make sense. As far as
it was the Great Depression.
The two main characters, Polly and Sam, I know nothing about their past either. And even then, there's not a lot of actual screen time with them. It wasn't until about halfway through the game where I was really more doing missions with them. Majority of the time, you're driving in the car with them is kind of what you're getting. Then they drop you off somewhere, and you don't really see them. I didn't know these characters.
See, this is where I actually disagree with you, because I think the importance of Polly and Sam and any of these other guys is the relationship moving forward. Everything behind that didn't matter. They're mob guys. You don't need to know why they're in the mob. You find out about the Don, and you find out about Frank, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right name. Like, you find their background, and that's kind of interesting because that's the deeper level of the mob. Like,
yeah.
But the guys like Polly and Sam, it's more about the relationship that they build with Tommy from when he starts in the mob and forward.
This is crazy to me. And yes, part of the reason why I think this might be a little bit disjointed to you, Andrew, is if you're not familiar with mob films, to me, this is a perfect version of how mob films are, which is kind of giving you segments and kind of a little bit of jumping around of how the family kind of evolves through these moments. But there are a lot of moments between Sam and Polly with Tommy where they're kind of like joking about, hey, remember, when we first made you drive, we had a gun to your head, and they're kind of busting his chops and stuff like that, and how they evolve from there to later on where they are brothers, like where they are brothers, and how they're talking and interacting with each other is on a way more personal level. Like, it absolutely, the dynamic changes in there. And I like that you brought that up too, Keith, that moment where he's driving Frank home and Frank is telling him about the dog, the racing dog, and how he met the Don. What a cool little backstory that
was good.
Again, didn't do a whole lot, but the game is chock full of that. When he walks Sarah home that night, not much gameplay happening. Again, it's basically a walking simulator. But the conversations you're having as why the game decides to take a moment where she goes and feeds food to this poor family was like, oh, you didn't need to do that. You could have just had them just walk home. But it showed her and her personality. And then she gives you even more backstory as to why she does that. And all those moments are like, okay, I could see why he would like her, why he would be drawn to her. They took a moment to even add a little extra character element there to her. The game is chock full of that. It is chock full of these elements that are not just like I'm a mobster, I do mob stuff, because that's how so many of these games kind of play out. Is they're just meathead dummies.
Sorry, listeners, for that volume.
I think it took its time to actually develop those characters. I don't know. I think you were just missing too many of those beats.
Well, okay, so this is I will say a little bit for me. This is kind of where my mind expectation was. As I said, I was originally thinking this was going to be like Grand Theft Auto. So I was expecting there to be side missions of me going with Polly, building this relationship, doing side quests with him, getting actual connection with him, and more understanding of our dynamic relationship, or Sam or anyone else. I was expecting that, but that is not here. It is just main story going beat by beat. And with Sarah, I agree that moment was great. But after that scene, guess how many times Sarah's in the game? She's in like two more cutscenes, one of them being the end. And I'm like, this makes no sense. The entire time they're talking about like, oh, Sarah, you guys are married now. You guys have a kid. How many times do you see the kid? Once in the epilogue. And it's just like, this is what I mean. Like, this game's constantly reminding you, hey, you have this life of a family, but we're not going to show you the family.
I gotta say this. This is because this is really rare. This is really really a rare moment.
I know he's defending the story, and I'm the one who doesn't like the story.
Well, that's what I'm gonna say. I think my biggest complaint is, I think like kind of like Aaron was saying, it's just kind of a pretty generic mafia story, and I think that's where I was a little like, okay, cool, this is just and then this happened, but the more we're talking about it, I do think the way they told the story is fantastic, because while she's not in it, I think it's very powerful moments. One of them being after you get into that huge fight where you're ambushed, and then you come home and you're trying to hold yourself together, like, yep, I'm home, sorry, I'm late. And then she goes and she puts your jacket on, and it just gets a little bit of blood on her hand, and it just ends with them like hugging. And it's just this moment of like, she's not going to say a word because she recognizes he doesn't want to talk about it, but she's there for him. And it just shows the importance of him. And like, the more and more I hear Andrew talking, the more and more I'm like, all right, you're completely wrong about this. And maybe I was even a little bit wrong, but I'm on Aaron's side on this. All right. I probably have a lot of other things I'm going to complain about.
I can't think of the last, well, obviously, like, you could look at something like, especially like heavy story driven things, like obviously like Hellblade obviously does a really good job, but considering how old this game is, I was just genuinely shocked at how much story was there and how good I thought the voice acting was. Truly great. Like, I thought everybody's character was really good.
I have a few gripes, but I'll wait.
But Javier in our chat made a good point. Yeah, the original game came out in 2002. I forgot to mention that. So this game is originally 2002. And then he also made a point of, you're retelling the story to a cop. You probably wouldn't fill him in on the details of like your kids. Which
I think he would, because he's looking for protection, right? So he would want him to know about the kids. But
he is explaining kind of how
the important parts. So yeah, the important parts.
And again, the story even does, like, for instance, I guess we've talked a lot about story, but I don't really want to spoil everything. But after one event happens, your team lays low. And he even says, like, we laid low for 8 months, 7-8 months. And you don't obviously see anything happening in those 7-8 months because they weren't doing anything. He said they were just drinking in the bar, just having a few laughs. And the cops would show up every once in a while just to let us know they were there. And again, I didn't care that I didn't see those 7 or 8 months. And I think, again, they do a great job of, though, when you see those characters interacting, they're interacting as if, hey, we're close. Like, we are an actual family now. So again, you might look at that and say, well, it's just jumping around. We're missing a bunch of stuff. We're missing a bunch of beats in there. But I think that's a good point. If he's recounting this to a cop, he's saying, dude, there was like 7 or 8 months of nothing. Like, there's nothing to really fill you in there.
And I get that. But a story telling me, hey, these people are brothers, is different from me actually feeling like they're brothers. And this is what I mean. Like, those 7 or 8 months would have been a perfect example of like what I'm saying of how I wish this was a Grand Theft Auto type of game, of at that time me being able to do a side quest or something like that, kind of something minor and trivial. Just
what side quest would you be doing if you're laying low? Are you going to go out and just like smash up a few cars?
No, more racing. I felt like they were trying to build the racing into a mini game. It's not. There's collectible things you can do. Like, you can easily do like collecting protection money or something, or I don't know, stopping.
That's walking right into the trap of, like, you literally get, and I know this is taking from the gameplay more, but if you bring a cop to where you're going, it's immediately like, nope, you failed because a cop is at your job. So even if it's just collecting protection money, or if it's, killing somebody, like it's all the same. You're doing a mob job or mafia job, so they didn't do anything for like 7 or 8 months to stay off of the radar. There's nothing interesting. Maybe at best, if they wanted to throw in an extra cutscene to make the gameplay like 35%, 65% story, then sure. But I think that would have been overkill to literally do a unrelated cutscene. Because other than just becoming closer friends, like they're not building the Mafia friendship of like those they almost die together moments that you see a lot of.
And that to me. So, okay, so one of your early missions, I think a lot of the missions you are doing are what you would equate to a side mission in like a Grand Theft Auto. So I think you do side missions. They're just this how the game formats them. You kind of have to do everything. It's all part of the main quest. But I think about the instant where they are out collecting money from locations, how Sam and Polly are interacting with you then, which is way more distant. They're kind of cold to you. To when you run the mission, I don't want to spoil it. When somebody gets shot, they're trying to escape in a truck.
Yeah.
Like clearly there is growth between what the characters looked like then to what they look like there. And again, that whole sequence is a great sequence of these 3 guys care for each other and are going the extra mile to make sure that they take care of each other. I thought, again, I feel like that's way more than I see.
I took an issue with that mission for one mission. Again, from a gameplay perspective, I'm the wheelman. Why does he go running for the truck? Why doesn't he not go
fun for the video game aspect?
I mean, but you're the wheelman. Shouldn't it be like, hey, driver, you go get the truck. I'm gonna sit here and do what I do, and they're like, we're gonna do the opposite of our specialties here, and hope it goes.
It's supposed to be the gunman. That's the thing too. That's the other thing too. They keep saying you're the best gunman, so you're the best wheelman. You're the best gunman. It's like so. Apparently, you're just the best guy ever.
Do they call you the best gunman? I don't.
They do.
I don't remember
the game,
that,
but I beat the game, and they have you do a sniper mission because they're like, you're the best shooter, and it's like, okay, I guess I'm the best shooter.
By that point, you've kind of proven yourself, I guess.
I guess. But with that mission too, though, the guy's like, oh, we need to find Sam. Because at that point, I had no idea who Sam was. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. They're like, look around for him. But I'm like, who is he? Luckily, there's a cutscene going, hey, there's Sam. And I go, oh, okay. Well, luckily, that's Sam because I don't know who he is.
You didn't know who that character was?
I knew he was. I had no idea what he looked like.
Also, you're in the middle of a farm. I don't know. There wasn't like there was a ton of people walking around that I was like, which one is Sam? I was like, I'm just going to come to Sam's location. And that's what's going to, I kind of knew. I wasn't worried about what Sam looked like in that moment.
Yeah.
But no, I do feel like it jumped the story because like you have a mission where it's like, ooh, the war starts. You literally do 2 more missions. The war's over. And it's just like, okay, so much for a war.
Well, that's where the gameplay was cut because they couldn't fit in more missions to do more warring.
Yeah, there's I mean, we've obviously hit on it. Like there was absolutely missed opportunities. It was crazy at the beginning of the game where they're teaching you like how to jimmy into a car.
Yeah,
and it's like I never needed to do that.
I know. I did it for the achievement and never did it.
Yeah, for like, collectibles.
I was like, would I have to stop what I was doing just to go steal a car that I don't need at that moment? Like, that's the only way to do this. There was a lot of stuff that they could have done, and I do wonder. I've never played any of the Mafia games. It's the only one I've ever played. I do wonder and imagine that in the other games they probably expand on a lot of those things. To me, this was watching a mob movie with some gameplay elements. That's all it really is. I don't even think the shooting in this game is very good.
It's awful.
Yeah,
it's awful.
It's okay at best.
Yeah.
It is bad, but some of the missions are fun, but it's just gameplay wise, it was fine. That was the biggest missed opportunity in my eyes.
Yeah, the gameplay, as I said, this is a 3rd-person shooter. You know, it's generic. Take behind, cover behind things, pop out, shoot enemies, rinse, repeat. 90%. That's 90% of the gameplay. Every once in a while, you get some driving missions where usually you're the driver and you have NPCs shooting at enemies. Which in the car, the NPCs are worthless. On the field, I thought the NPCs were good. But yeah, then randomly you have one actual like race style mission where you're actually on a racetrack with a race car. Never do that again. And it's just, the gameplay for me was kind of all over the place. I thought it was fine. I do think it's funny where it's just like, it 90% of the time it literally is you versus everyone. And the people are always just kind of like, oh, I don't know if you can do this. Like at some point you're shooting like 50 cops, you're shooting 50 mob men. Like you're just kind of going to town all by yourself. And it's like,
have you never played a video game?
I don't.
Don't get me wrong.
This sounds like this is the first time you've played a video game. Like, you're just some sort of superhuman and you're just killing thousands of people. I'm going to go play Diablo now.
Hold on. The main reason I'm laughing about it is because almost every time the story is always kind of like, oh, I don't know if he's going to make it. I don't know how he's going to get out of there.
Again, have you never played a video game?
But they just kept emphasizing on like, oh, the odds are stacked against you. And it's just like, yeah,
your favorite video game of all series of all time is Halo, Andrew. How many missions did they go into? Like, oh, is Master Chief going to be able to do this?
But this is my great. You're a cat.
Because Halo is how many games and books and a TV show, whether you like it or not. This is a game that is part of a trilogy, and that's it.
Let me explain.
You're annoying me
now. In Mafia 2, I remember this specifically Mafia 2, and it makes sense. In Mafia 2, you're a World War II veteran coming home. Makes sense. Understandable why you're able to shoot a bunch of people. In this game, you're a cabbie. How are you shooting a bunch of people all by yourself? Makes no sense.
I like how Andrew turned everybody against him. Like his takes were just getting worse and worse. Like Keith was kind of on the fence, and he's just like, screw this guy over here. What is he talking about? Good job, Andrew. You're really winning this one.
I'm probably getting so many hate emails about how wrong I am in this one.
I don't think you're. I like this thing though. Is like I don't think you're wrong to say that this isn't a game. Like, and I always say that to say like somebody would obviously enjoy this, and I totally understand why people would enjoy this game. I just thought it was a hot take to say that the story was the biggest problem, because it's like, of all the things here, the story was the thing that I think
biggest problem.
Well,
I just said
you seemed to think that's where they made cuts. To me, is just insane, because I think they spent so much time on these odd details in the story that I just didn't. I just thought that was that was your most controversial thing.
I mean, okay, I agree. Keith made a good point of like, it's more of them cutting gameplay, because they could have added more cutscenes, but then it would have been way more boring. Yeah, like you said, there's only like 40% where you actually touch the controller. So I do agree. Yes, it isn't the story that got cut. It is gameplay. Because would I have enjoyed an hour more of cutscenes? Probably not. Like, I don't think that would have improved my experience. I would have. I'm more complaining that I wanted to play and get into things than learn about the characters.
Well, that's exactly it. Like you, and maybe this is part of where you were going to end up too. But like talking about the gameplay is that you wanted those 7-8 months of downtime to be like side missions and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
I was looking more for like, again, in the theme of like a Grand Theft Auto or really any open world type of RPG type of thing, is that you go out to do the mission, but then you can just veer off and, hey, somebody's having trouble. You get a call from, well, maybe not a call because it's the 30s, but you come across, some of your guys are in trouble. So you stop and you help them on the way over there. Like, that's the type of stuff I was looking for, a reason to want to steal these vehicles other than an achievement or a collectible. Like, that's the things I was looking for in the gameplay in those in-between times, because then I realized you could skip drive, and then I touched my controller even less, because then I wasn't even driving. I was just skipping it. And so like, but at the same token, I think if you really do want to, like, and we can move past the story, but at least if you want to understand the characters a little more, those drive sequences are actually really cool. And actually, we can get more into the audio. I thought the radio was wicked cool. But
I agree.
We'll talk about that later.
I was going to point that out. I was going to point out like there were certain details in the game that I actually really, really loved. And the radio is one of them. I thought, I don't know why, like, you just don't get many games, I guess, in this era. So, like, there's some, but there's not many. And it just, the first thing that it like kind of brings me to is like BioShock, where it's got that 1930s feel. So it had that type of music and stuff playing in the background. So I don't know. To me, it gives it such a cool vibe to have this
it does.
1930s era music. And so I thought that was a odd highlight.
Yeah. But I agree. I wanted to build up the family. I wanted to feel like I'm actual part of the member of the family, because there's no currency in this game. Even though you're seeing money on the screen, your character literally has no money, which was also kind of annoying with the story, because I thought I was doing well. I thought I was well off, but then literally at the end, you're like, I have no money. And it's like, well, where'd the money go? But anyway, I will say, all right, so what did you guys think of the driving? Well, actually, before we get into that, what
Frank kinda
difficulty did you
explains
guys
that, but
play?
okay.
Oh, sorry. What were you
Medium.
going to say, Aaron?
I was gonna say Frank kind of explains at that one point that you're just burning your money. You're not making good decisions with your money. You're just throwing it all over the place. He tells you to stop doing that. Don't. He says, "I heard you went into the bar and you bought everybody drinks there." And he's like, "Oh yeah, what's the big deal?" He's like, "Spend it anywhere else. Invest it." He's like, "Oh, you think I'm some type of Wall Street boy?" And then he gives him the story of like, "Hey, once you don't become useful to us, we get rid of you." So he kind of explains to him, "You're an idiot with your money. You're just burning it, and you're not making good decisions with it." So again, that character development was there, but
very quick. But anyway, so first of all, so what difficulty did you guys play on?
Medium.
Yeah, whatever the regular one was, whatever was standard.
So I first started in classic because I saw there was an achievement for it. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do classic. I do not recommend classic. Don't do it. Because I'm assuming classic is actually how the game originally was, and if this is how the game originally was, this game was awful. Because realistic to the race car mission. Thank you, Javier. That's what I'm getting to. I was playing classic, and I was like, this isn't too bad. Driving the cars in classic is like driving a boat. It is awful. And it's like the fourth mission, you're doing a race car, as we said, a race car mission, and you have to, it's 3 laps. You have to win, and it is so bad. Literally, my 4-year-old was heckling me. I kept restarting this mission because you slightly turn, your car spins out, and I'm like, this is awful. And she's like, Daddy, are you losing again? I'm like, yes, thank you. I am losing. And this is also surprisingly, I'm playing on the Series X. This game actually has a significant load time.
Yeah.
Anytime I restart it, it's like a good 10 seconds. It's like, man, I'm spoiled now with like those load times and having like a 10-second load time. I was like, this is specifically for that mission. I was like, this is awful. So I turned it to medium. Don't go classic. It's just not a fun time. But
I think I played on classic. I had more issues with the bringing the race car across town than the race itself.
Oh, that was awful too.
Because because you're going so fast and you're weaving through traffic on a vehicle that does not have great handling. So it was not hard and to like slam into something and just blow up.
Yep.
And you're like, yeah, I just gotta start this over. So I tried taking it slower, but it just takes one car to kind of veer in front of you and screw it all up.
I beat that mission literally with 1 second left. I was, sure enough, that was when my 4-year-old was watching too, and she was like, "Are you gonna make it?" I'm like, "I don't know."
I'm doing my best. See, I didn't touch classic. I just kind of assumed that it was like a hard mode, since there was an achievement for it. I went, I'm just gonna play on medium. I thought the driving was one of my favorite parts of the gameplay. And again, I'm not playing on classic. I don't know how much worse it is. Yes, the race car mission kind of stunk, but at the same token, maybe this is part of the definitive edition remaster. I doubt it though. I was kind of impressed with some of the physics that they put into the game, because your race cars, they are, there's a complete lack of them. You can just smash into everybody and it doesn't matter. That's kind of how I won my race.
Road rash.
Yeah, exactly. Just drive straight through everyone until you get to the lead. But your cars are like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like a long canoe, and you have four wheels. Yeah, but your four wheels are sticking out. Your wheels could like interlock and get stuck. It was a little bit annoying because it was like they tried to. It was like oversensitive at points, but I thought that was actually a really cool touch for a game that was, I didn't know it was 2002 originally, but like an older game that was remade. A lot of games today wouldn't do that. They would just make your body the parallel of those wheels and call it a day. So I really liked that aspect, but I thought the cars were kind of fun to drive. They were all just very like loose, and I don't know, all like none, and you're never going too fast. I thought it was pretty fun, and that's where I was looking for more of those, like you said, the racing missions, the driving missions, because bringing the car back across town, it was kind of fun, like having it like wobble all over on you, and it was like, it was a pain in the butt to drive, but I was like, I want more of that. The guy offers you more work, and then you never another car mission.
Oh yeah, I forgot about you in the race. He's like, hey, come to my shop under the bridge. I got a like line set up for you. You ever do?
Yeah, so none of that ever happens. But gosh, I hated the gunplay so much. Like I ultimately ended up putting the what's it called? Aim assist all the way up to high. Yeah. And it's still donkey garbage. It's so bad. So that was the part that I was like getting so irritated with the game.
The gunplay I thought was fine. The only thing that irritated me is this game has a health bar, and it's like I don't like games with health bars now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is the gunplay becomes really apparent, and it oddly makes the game have random difficulty spikes.
Yeah,
where the bad gunplay mixed with your health bar and limited health on
and
the
limited
maps.
ammo.
Yeah, but I didn't have a problem with that because when you were killing enough people, you could just pick up the guns off the ground. So I was picking stuff up off the ground like crazy. But there were some missions like I was having a hard time with because again, gunplay was very spotty. So I'm getting chewed up just trying to hit people, and like I'm desperate to just find a health box to pick up. So yeah, it would like randomly spike in difficulty because of that. Of just kind of bad gunplay makes the game a little bit harder than it probably needed to be.
Yeah, the gunplay to me was fine. The AI was kind of dumb. Like sometimes they were good at taking cover, then other times they literally would get up and just casually like slowly walk up to you just to be easy to be shot at. It's just like, okay. I do like the few times you actually had an AI like people with you. Like I actually thought they were pretty decent. They actually would kill guys. Because I always hate that. I always feel like a game has your partners kill nobody or they're just too good. And this, I felt like it was a good balance of them like actually taking out people that were like, get behind us and stuff like that. But yeah, there was very limited guns. I understand this is 1930s, but you have like 4 different pistols, 1 Tommy gun, 1 shotgun, 1 bolt rifle, and 1 sniper rifle. That's like it. That is all your guns. And there's just, I wanted a little bit more from that. I would have loved if there was customization. This is one thing I loved. I know this is getting a little bit in graphics, but they nailed the aesthetics in this game. But I couldn't change my character's outfit. Why can't I pick a fedora? I want to pick a fedora or customize my guns a little bit.
I mean, I think that's an age thing. I mean, yeah, I know that there was some customization and stuff, but maybe in those early aughts games and whatnot, but I don't think that was the highlight of this. You were a character. You weren't yourself. You weren't playing a character that you created. You were playing the character. So they designed you. They fit you to what you were at all times. And so that's a minor gripe that I'm not on board with. Yes, the gun selection was kind of lame, but I think that just goes down to, at least for me, being just bad gunplay, probably a product of its time. But the AI had weird smart moments because there was at least a couple times where I'm in these big gun battles and he like yelled something about like, it was like he was like trying to distract me basically. Like he yelled something intentionally distracting and like went sprinting across the room to another cover spot, mind you. But it was like I could see that, especially, I don't know, I've never been in a gunfight, but if you have a bunch of people fighting one guy, if you can distract that one guy, you have pretty good odds. I mean, you probably have pretty good odds to start, but that's going to help you out a lot. And it was just like, I thought they did a few smart things. But yes, you are right. They had those few moments where they just casually walk at you and or not move at all if you could kind of get them locked up in weird places. But overall, I didn't even have a lot of gripes with the AI. I thought the gunplay was just bad. That was in that, other than the driving and the story, that was it.
Yeah, and now, by the way, did you see today a new Mafia game was announced at Gamescom?
Yeah. Javier, at least put it up in our Discord, so that's why I saw it.
Okay.
And I think it takes place back like in the 30s, right?
I didn't watch the trailer.
So the third one takes place like in the 70s.
Javier says yes.
I remember that.
Good.
So do we know, like, Andrew, do you know, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but why is this a definitive edition? So is it just a remaster? Is that what the big change was? And why is 2K involved? Were they just a publisher?
Yeah, 2K is just a publisher.
Okay. Because I think that gives you you see 2K, you think, oh, Grand Theft Auto. So I could, again, that's another thing that I think adds to it.
Well, 2K I think now owns the Mafia IP because I'm pretty sure 2K actually made Mafia 3. And like I said, Mafia 3 is way more actually like Grand Theft Auto style of it being open world.
Yeah. Okay. So when we say definitive edition, I'm assuming that just means a remaster because
Yeah.
I don't think any of this was added content. This all looks like it was the same stuff. So my guess was it's just really, instead of remaster, they called it definitive edition. Do you know, Andrew, is that the case?
I think typically, yeah, like we've played a few definitive editions.
I thought
Wasn't
definitive
Ori one of
editions
them?
were like if they had DLC that was added after, they kind of all put it into the product and call it the definitive edition.
Usually. But
content.
no, this I think is more just meant to be a remaster. Because I don't think there ever was any DLC for this game, because this was 2002. Like, there wasn't that much DLC then.
To me, knowing that this came out in 2002 really does kind of blow my mind a little bit. Like, obviously, I know the graphics didn't look as good. The character models probably looked obviously a lot worse. But considering 2002, I'm trying to think, like, man, was this actually great gameplay? Was this?
I mean, I was still playing PlayStation 2 back in 2002. So like,
that's wild to me. So that's why I was wondering when they called it a definitive edition, like, was the shooting actually a lot worse? Maybe you're right. Maybe that classic mode was actually even just the control feeling of things were also changed.
Yeah,
that probably is a touch up to it too. Yeah. Because maybe there was never originally a difficulty either. It was just like you played the game and that was it.
I would find that hard to believe, though, because like difficulties have been in video games since the N64.
Yeah, but they've also not been in difficulties since ever in games since ever. It's kind of a design choice at that point.
Yeah, you could be right.
Sorry, I keep looking. There was a cockroach in my room. I don't know where it went. I'm afraid it's gonna come up on me. I thought it was on my leg for a second.
Just put a horse head in its bed.
That's a good reference.
Yeah. See, then
okay. And this is another one of my complaints. I was expecting a little bit more Mafia stuff. I was expecting. Okay, well, because I was expecting, you taking someone down to the docks. I was expecting, kind of a little bit more betrayal stuff, which there is some. But
so, like, not spoiling it, but like following someone to an airport and, offing him there because he's trying to, go against the family. That's not very Mafia. Like, you're right. No, that's not.
Some.
I'm just talking crazy. That's not Mafia stuff.
This is once again because of my mindset of me thinking this is going to be more like Grand Theft Auto. I was expecting things like that, and also that I thought it was a missed opportunity when you die. It just says you died. It's like, oh, come on! It couldn't say something funny, like cool, or like, oh, you got whacked. It's like, or sleeping with the fishes. The taking a dirt nap.
The game takes its material very seriously. Like, it doesn't do stereotypical things like I'd mentioned earlier. Like, the goons don't act like a bunch of goons. They act like real people, real characters. And so I don't think it was looking to make a bunch of jokes like that. I also think that at its heart, and why kind of what you're saying, I don't think you saw stuff like that. One, it didn't progress the story. Technically, every mission is progressing the story, because what he was trying to explain to the cop at the beginning is basically this is how the fight with the Morello family was escalating and growing. Each time one of these things was happening was either them getting at us or us getting at them. And so I felt like that was the whole point. So doing any kind of side thing didn't really make a lot of sense. The other thing is they ultimately want Tommy to be a likable character. They want him to not be a ghoulish fiend, even though he is, and he definitely starts to fall into that territory. I think once you get to the point where you're kind of just murdering people in cold blood, it takes a different turn. Where in this, any type of killing you were doing, you were either being shot at or it was directly tied with the war. But it wasn't like, you didn't pay up, so now we're going to go put you in cinder blocks and throw you into the river. I think that suddenly makes Tommy feel way worse and way less likable as a person if you do something like that. So I think that's probably, again, kind of an intentional choice to not put him in those situations.
I mean, I was running people down on the streets as a cabbie, so I was already murdering in cold blood.
That's the other thing. So at least you experienced there in classic mode, there's actually a speed limit. If you're going too
Yep.
fast, cops will start to chase you. So
Yep.
you can actually turn on a speed limiter so your car doesn't go too fast, so you don't get the cops mad
Oh,
at
see,
you.
I used the limiter because I assumed it did. Like well, I say I assumed it did. I kind of figured out that they didn't care about speed; they only cared about collisions. But it was like at the very beginning, at least, I was like trying to be conscious about that and like making sure I didn't break the rules.
How often do you do that in video games where
It's so
I-
hard; they
I
don't let
can't
you.
help it?
Yeah.
I know the games, but I've always thought about that. Like, man, what a video game idea of just like obeying the laws as you're driving. Just make a big open world, but just you have to sit at traffic lights. You have to stop for a beat.
So it's Grand
You
Theft
get-
Auto, but it's called
Exactly.
Honest Citizen.
I was thinking about that as I was playing this too.
It's called Traffic Jam Simulator.
I
Gotta get
I
to work 9 to
always
5.
immediately try to be like really careful when I'm driving. And it's always like halfway through, I'm like, screw this. And I just start, taking off. But for a while there, I'm always like, I'm going to obey the law. I'm going to be a good citizen here. And then, so I always just wondered, I was like, I'm surprised nobody's made a video game that was just, you actually lose
Because
points.
it's not fun. Let's get
Yeah,
to you. It would
There's
not
a lot
be
of
fun.
there's a lot of walking simulators and stuff. That are
Power
just
Wash
kinda stupid.
Simulator.
Yeah, this
But you're doing
fun
something
is
but to
subjective.
drive a car in traffic.
Fun is
That's not
subjective.
fun. That'd be awful. No, and that's whenever there's like those story moments too when you're driving people, that's the thing too, where it's like I speed so quick and it's like I'm at my destination, but clearly like they're only halfway through the conversation, so I kind of like have to like slow down or park. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, well, I want to hear the story because you just go too fast. But no, I would want to be obeying the traffic. I remember, when I first started classic mode and I saw that, I was like, oh, this sucks. But then I saw I could skip it. So it's like, okay, cool. I can skip driving and not have to worry about causing, speeding tickets or anyway. So that was nice. But yeah, for the graphics though, I will say, so Aaron, you were saying the acting's good. I do like the character models. Like I said, I love the aesthetic of this time. They did a great job. The vehicles look phenomenal. The lighting in this game is actually really good too. Like this remaster version is really well done. Everything just looks really, really good and crisp, especially for a game that came out in 2002.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, I go back to each character looked. They had their own individual look. Like Polly clearly looks like a Polly, and I even liked who's
So it
the
looks like a
character?
parrot.
Who's the mechanic?
Ralphie.
I like him. I
liked him a lot too.
Vincenzo or Vinny, the gun guy. He was fine. You don't really get to do a lot, but again, I like the fact that they had a character with a speech impediment.
Yeah,
who's a really likable character, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool to have him in there. So that's why I say, like, I thought the character designs, they all felt just very well thought out and intentional in how they wanted each of these characters to feel. And yeah, I don't know. I'm really baffled. I agree that it's not a game. I just did not think that we would fall so far apart on why it's not a game.
I mean,
fact,
for me,
this is a good question. Actually, if you didn't care for the story, and you didn't really care for the gameplay, and you also had issues with the driving, then what did you actually like then? Because you've only named some kind of small elements.
I like the world building. I really enjoyed. I felt like this was in the 1930s. I liked that aesthetic. I didn't hate the story. I just had issues with it. I wanted to love the story. Like I said, there's a lot of things about this I wanted to love. And I felt like with slight improvements, I would have loved it. If this was a more Grand Theft Auto style game like I thought it was going to be, I think I would have absolutely loved this game. I would have loved doing side quests with these characters, getting to know them personally, going through this. Like I said, I would have loved to build this family, because when you first get there, it seems like, we're a smaller gang. He even says every dollar we make, Morello makes $10. So like they're a bigger gang that's just beating you guys. And I would have loved that element of me working the turf that we're on, doing protection stuff, doing side stuff, really enveloping myself in this family. Like that's what it would have been better for it. But as far as the actual story goes, I thought it was fine. It didn't do anything crazy. It's just at the end, the story was focusing so much on Polly and Sam of being like, you guys are brothers. But I didn't feel like we were brothers. Like just because the game's telling me you're brothers, I don't.
There's a scene when you're driving
Yeah, that's
Sam
a
home.
scene. I
No,
get that.
I'm just saying to me there's lots of it, but there's a scene where you're driving Sam home and Sam's talking to you about how everything just comes naturally to you, where for him he felt like he had to cut his teeth in the family and he had to do all this work to get there. And for Sam or for Tommy it just always came naturally. And there was like just these small elements of where he was showing kind of admiration for Tommy and his appreciation for having Tommy there. I thought there was tons of it, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not in the minority because Keith's with me, so you're in the minority.
I am. I know I am. And which is fine. Obviously, like, this is why we have these 3 different perspectives, Everything's not for everyone. But yeah, the audio, I liked, like, I didn't think about it, which is odd, but the music, especially when you're like in a battle, is very not orchestral, but it's like jazzy.
It's some of the music.
It was cool. Great. It was very different. Some of it felt odd because it was doing that music when you're stealthing. And I'm like, this is not stealth music. That's what it was mostly throwing me off. But besides that, I really liked it.
There was one of them. I swear I've heard the music playing in Disney, and I was like chasing somebody down, and so it was kind of making me laugh. But like, I loved the music overall. Like Aaron and I were talking a little bit about the radio. The radio now, and while it's not all music, that was part of what I loved so much about it. And I guess this is the one thing Andrew agrees about is the world building, is these small little details of the announcer telling you about what do they call it? The Gold Series, not the World Series, but the World Series.
Yeah, I like
the World Series. And there's actually like the very next sequence, you get in the car and then you're actually listening to the game be played. You're not just finding out about it later, because then I think you even get back in the car later and it was like starting the game and then it's like the final inning. Like they really did an excellent job with that. And then the music, it would have felt weird if they didn't throw in the 30s music, but it just always felt very fitting, and I really appreciate it. It's almost like when I play Forza, I always play with classical music on. I know classical music isn't 30s music, but I like just a little bit of a different spin on the music while I'm driving.
I like the radio element I remember is just like when you're driving in the storm.
Yeah, and he's like warning people about driving.
Yeah, and he's talking about the police are asking that everybody, and there was small elements like that because the world itself, although it's very surface level, like it's very surface level cool. Like obviously how everybody's dressed, the vehicles, all that stuff looks really good. But the city doesn't feel alive. And again, I'm gonna be fair. It's 2002 when the game came out, so fine. I'm gonna be totally fair on that. Like but like even when you go to Chinatown, it's very surface level on how it looks. But then if you're, there's really no depth there. There's nothing really going on in there. So I think having little elements like that help you feel like there's more going on. Which, speaking of kind of depth, that whole intro sequence when you first load up the game, where it's kind of doing a fly through the city and it just keeps doing different fly throughs. Do you remember this?
No.
So it's playing 1930s kind of like slow jazz music. I swear this went on for like 10 minutes. It felt like an eternity. It would just do like these slow,
like this is the title or like the actual beginning cutscene.
Yes. So after you load into the game, so you press start, new game, and clearly what it felt like is they were really proud of what this game looked like and what they created. And
it's 2002.
I know, but it's literally like a 10-minute long sequence, and none of it looks great. It looks okay. I'm telling you, I hope somebody boots this up and just recognizes. Maybe I'm exaggerating when I said it's 10 minutes, but it is at least 15 separate scenes of you flying through a different part of the city and then to another one. You're flying now through this part of the city. Oh,
is it shorter or longer than the Call of Duty intro?
It was crazy. It like kept going, and I was like, is it gonna start? Like, what? This is going on forever. But yeah, it was like the whole time I was like, all right, but this doesn't, like, considering what you can play as an open world game today, you're like, all right, I mean, this looks okay, but
I do have one complaint about the voice acting, and only one, and it is Polly. His voice is so like it's cartoonish.
A little bit, yeah.
And he's the only one. Everyone else is fantastic. So I'm not trying to like bring down the whole voice acting. Polly's was so bad. Not even his overplayed accent. His voice actively sounded cartoonish. It didn't sound like a natural human voice to me.
All right. I will say, because I did point this out to Andrew, where I was like, I do think this game took its material very seriously. So it wasn't really making a lot, it wasn't doing a lot of stereotypes. It wasn't doing a lot of like over the top mob stuff. Yeah, I could see where you could look at that character and say, like, if I was designing an over the top Italian mafia guy, this
He'd be
would
perfect.
look like.
His name would be Polly.
Yeah. Again, there are elements to his character that I think kind of break against it, where you're like, oh, that's like his facade. Like that's kind of like his approach. But there are moments where he's like scared, where he kind of drops that and he stops kind of acting like that. And again, that's why I go back to, I think there's actually a lot of layers to the story and the character development. But I would agree on paper. I think, yeah, he comes off as the most like stereotypical, like annoying mob guy. So he just confirmed. I got a confirmation. It is like 3 minutes of this opening sequence of it just cutting through different parts of the city. I was all right. So I wasn't crazy. I was sitting there like, man, this is going on forever. This just keeps showing me random parts of the city for no reason, like no context. I think they were like, at the time they were probably like, look at what we built. Like, isn't this crazy? So we're gonna force you to watch 3 minutes of just random clips of the city.
But this game's okay. I wouldn't recommend it for achievement hunters. So they obviously, there's collectibles in this game, and there's way too many collectibles. Way too many collectibles for a game that's not an open world game. But you got cards to collect, you got comics to collect, you got cigarette cards to collect, you got postcards to collect, you got foxes to collect. Like there's just a lot of stuff to collect. And at first I was
over
digging
100.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I was just like, I could not be bothered to do this. You at least get an achievement for every mission you beat. So if you're trying to get the Microsoft reward points and just get an achievement for the day, this one's pretty easy for you. But there's nothing like crazy fun for the achievements. Just like, pop a wheelie for 3 seconds. It's not hard to do. There's a really crappy car, get it to 50 miles an hour. And it's like, okay, like that was it for fun achievements. The rest are collect everything and do the main missions, and that's it.
But
achievements are kind of disappointing.
I mean, but I think that's a definitive edition thing, right? Because this was originally an Xbox game, so it didn't even have achievements. So they just put something in there.
Yeah.
And if their game was built on having the ability to do all these fun different things, like those were really about the most fun things you could do. Like, let me see how fast I can drive this crappy car. That was about the most unique thing the gameplay offered. And actually, just out of curiosity too, Aaron, because you were mentioning it, I looked it up. So the definitive edition for Mafia 1, they define it as like a full rebuild. So it's still the same everything, but they built it from the ground up. Mafia 2, I guess the graphics are actually a little less because all they did was an HD remaster of it rather than a full rebuild. But I think, like, and I did a quick search, like if you compare the original versus this, graphics are wildly different. They were probably still really good for their time, but wildly different. So I wouldn't put this at least in terms of playing the definitive edition, I wouldn't be comparing the graphics against the 2002 game. I would compare it against the 2020 game where it was released.
That's all right. So that makes sense, because I'm kind of in the same boat where, like, I knew the Mafia series existed, and I know there are people that swear by, especially the first one. They swear by it. And again, I say this to say, like, I don't think this is a game, but I do totally get why people would like this. Like, especially if you were somebody that cared about story and character, this would be 100% up your alley. If you don't really want to touch a controller all that much, this is great. And if the times you do want to touch the controller, you're immediately frustrated by it, this is perfect. But I totally get that. It's crazy to me that they, like, basically built this game from the ground up again. Like, I get people liked it. Did they like it that much that it needed a complete rebuild? That's kind of crazy.
I almost wonder if it was a hardware thing to a certain degree. Like if coming off of the Xbox, they just had to do so much that they were just like, you know what, screw it. We're not just gonna put a fresh coat of paint on it. We're gonna do the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at screenshots of the original Mafia, and
It's
they're
not terrible.
not bad. No,
No, it's not terrible. It's just
The
it's
environment's-
wildly different.
yeah,
It's like if
environment's
you,
a little flat. But
I'm looking at it more like if you look at, I think like there's a shot I'm seeing here of the Dawn. I mean, for one, his hair is like blonde and his face is gray, whereas he looks like a person in the remake. But I mean, yeah. So that's where I would say, like, comparing the graphics for this game, I would compare it against a 2020 game, not a 2002 game, and why they're so really good.
yeah. But anyway, let's get into a final thought. I guess I'll go first, since I already got everyone kind of mad at me. All right. So like I said, for Mafia Definitive Edition, if you go into this game, like I said, don't expect this to be like a Grand Theft Auto. If you just go into this looking for a Mafia style third-person shooter game, I think you'll have a much better experience than I did. There's a lot of things, like I said, while I was playing this game, where I was like, man, if they just added these little things, I would be loving this so much more. It's not a bad game. Its story, I thought, was fine. I had obviously some issues with it, but like by the end of it, I was like, okay, like I said, in 2002, a lot of these story elements were probably a little more revolutionary, but playing this now in 2024, I'm like, okay, this is relatively generic. But overall, I did enjoy my time with it. I did have some fun with it. I was just slightly disappointed because it just kept ringing in my mind of, I wanted this to be better. Like I just wanted more out of this. I wanted to be more into this world, in these characters. But unfortunately, it just didn't do that for me. But this is still easily 75. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I just had I think a poor mindset.
It's odd to me that you just really hang on that expectation of a game because, like, I don't know, you shift your mindset a little bit. Like, oh, it's clearly not that.
Well,
but,
I try to. Okay,
but
it's my example. Do you ever get a drink and you think it's like root beer, and then you drink it and it's Sprite? You may not hate Sprite, but the fact that you were like, this is root beer, and then you drink it and you're like, oh, this is Sprite. Like, it's not that you hate it. It's
never
just,
had that happen
what your
to me.
mindset. Seriously?
I've never grabbed a Sprite and thought it was root beer.
Well, no, like if you don't see what the beverage is, I mean, you don't
Keith,
see.
come
what
on,
it is.
you understand the concept.
Yeah, shut up, Keith.
But either way, yeah, like so I didn't go into it with that, I guess, that same mindset, so I didn't have to hang my hat on it for the entirety of my gameplay. But overall, I mean, I gave it a game, so I don't have a lot of defending to do. I did change my mind on the story, and that I think, while I didn't necessarily like it overall, because I just don't care about a lot of Mafia mob stories, and it was a pretty generic one overall. Andrew's ignorance and Aaron's persuasiveness on this episode have swayed me to them doing a fantastic job of storytelling and layering and all of these things, and I kind of really appreciate it. So I think that's actually a really good aspect to it. I wanted to do more of the driving, but I realized I didn't need to, and I was kind of bummed, and that was that. And then the other, not fully third of the game, but third of the game, which is just getting into gunfights, is atrocious. And so I think if you want to get into the series and you want to start here, play it on easy, put the aim assist on high, don't struggle through the missions, and enjoy the game for what it is.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like the other ones get a little better on the actual gameplay stuff. So get yourself into those probably. So I still a game. Yeah, I think I'd give it a solid 80.
Ooh, all right. I hate when you guys. I hate the.
No, I got to go
number attachment.
79 just because I feel like 80 if I liked the gunplay. Sorry,
I
got to
see,
correct
this
that.
is why I hate the number thing, because at the beginning I get stressed about it. So I'm thinking
Really?
in my head, this is where I'm going to put the number, and then Andrew comes in with a number that's higher than where I would have gone, but I have to go higher because
You don't?
because how could I clearly enjoy the game more than Andrew, but give it a lesser score? Because
How many
the-
gabagools would you give it?
how many
that's all you have to-
gabagools? So
You gotta do that exit, Aaron. Do it again.
my whole point really kind of stands. I am actually kind of interested in checking out the second game. I'm not saying like I'm completely hooked on this series, but there was I was really into this story. I thought the story was great. I really do. I'm used to, when it comes to video games, where the story feels like it gets really sped up because it's really just trying to get you into the action. This game felt like the exact opposite. Like anytime action was taking place, it was really just trying to get you to the next cutscene. And so it kind of did this flip. But to me, those elements just work. And yes, I am nostalgic to old mob movies. And to me, this understood and loved those mob movies as well. And it came in with a clear intention of kind of doing its own version of a mob story, and generic, but some of those beats were better than what you get in your traditional mob film. And for that, it's the reason why it's worth playing. There's a lot of rough elements to this, but to me, that core was there. Andrew gave it a 79. Or I'm sorry, Andrew gave it a 75. Keith gave it a 79. I'm going to go with a 77.
Aaron, you could give a lower score. You're like Liz. Literally before every episode we record, she's like, what are you doing for a score? I'm like, just come up with a score. I don't think anyone ever really cares what number we ever actually give.
Well, I feel like
Gamer Pass is really our bread and butter.
Yeah, I feel like
the numbers are
really
just irrelevant.
Here's my issue. So, all right, I'm going to critique your podcast here. If you're going to say Gamer Pass, there has to be a score that defines this is when it's a game, this is when it's a pass.
No. Because there's been so many games I've played where I'm playing it, I'm like, this is not a good game. But whatever reason, it is sucking me in. A perfect example, you ever play the Earth Defense Force games?
Oh, yeah.
Those games suck, but I love them. Like, when I'm playing it, I'm like, this is not a good game. But I love playing them. They're a very fun game. And a lot of people do. They have a huge cult following. And they know they kind of, like, that's kind of their shtick, is like, they know they're kind of cheesy and crappy. But, like, that's like a perfect example. And there's also, as Keith said, there's games where he's like, I know this game's a masterpiece, but he doesn't like it. Case in point, The Witcher. Keith knows it's a good game. He's like, everything about it is good. He's like, it's just not for me. That's why it's a pass for him, but he still gave it.
I'm giving it a 77 because I clearly liked it more than Andrew. And I didn't give it a pass, which Keith did. So 77, it's perfect.
I didn't. Oh, you did give it a pass. You said, yeah.
I gave it a pass. You gave it a game. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. But thank you so much to our username ISKSMKDIFJ on Apple iTunes. That's his name. Unless you want to pronounce it somehow. But yeah, he recommended we played that. So yeah, make sure you give him a rating, Keith. It's been a while since we did a list of requests here.
Oh man.
Go us.
I mean, I don't. It's a tough one. If it's an iTunes review, I mean, who knows? Do they even listen to us anymore?
No, this is recent. 5 days ago.
Oh, it was? Oh, okay. 92. 92 feels good.
Look at that. But yeah, if you have any game suggestions, you can email us or go to GamePassGrabOut.com. You'll find the links to our Twitter and Facebook. Come join our Discord, or you'll see, talk to me and Keith. We're on there quite frequently. Our Facebook is the most consistent place where our live feed goes up. I'm trying to get it working on Twitter and YouTube. But yeah, also subscribe to our YouTube if you want to see our past recorded videos. But yeah, I've been your hardcore gamer host, Stan. You can find me on Xbox Live, Firebird01952. Thank you so much to all our Patreon members. Squid Kill, Nerd Talk Plus, PTS Daddy. Greatly appreciate you guys. You guys help keep the lights on and keep.
I've been Keith, and do you guys want me to read this review by Penetrator God on?
Sure.
It's actually not.
Wait. Review for what?
Honestly, I didn't. It's for
review
Mafia.
For the game?
It is. And actually, it's really not a very interesting review. I just wanted to say Penetrator God because I thought it was a funny name. But someone with the name FOV did say, ass gameplay, worst controls ever been in history. The racing is the most hateful things ever. That's all one sentence, and there is not a single punctuation in it.
Was that the definitive edition too, or regular?
It is. That was August 19th, 2024 on the definitive edition.
So then classic mode really is how the game used to be. And
the Beef reviewer gave it a 7.
Am I just doing an outro here? Is it me?
Yeah, do it up, Aaron.
Hey, my name's Aaron. Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry, you were like, hey, my name's Aaron. I enjoyed this game. Everyone else is wrong.
Well, just wanted to say goodbye.
All right, everyone. Well, I hope you all got a cool, good day.
Bye.
I don't even know what gabagool means.
It's a meat.